It's rained all night, snowed. Still some flurries coming down. All my clothes are wet. All my socks are wet, shoes are wet. Got 27, 28 miles in yesterday. Pretty solid day. And set me up pretty nice to get into town, about 9.5 miles this morning. But man, my feet are feeling pretty raw, pretty tender from being wet all day. I took my shoes off yesterday and they were just wrinkled up and my calluses were bulging out and just all sorts of funky stuff going on. So they feel a little tender to walk on today. Looking forward to getting into town, drying out, getting some food, and actually rehydrating. I only drank maybe 5 liters this whole section. So by the time I get into town of Plush, yeah, 5 liters over 56, 58 miles, something like that. I feel fine, totally fine. I'm still peeing. It's not dark yellow or anything, but I am a little thirsty, not gonna lie. It's a mining claim, mining post. And in here should be information on the claim, whoever owns it. It's probably pretty old. They don't typically mark mining claims like this anymore. There's the town of Plush over there in the distance. If you can even call it a town, it's basically just the Hart Mountain Store, a couple of cabins. Alright, here's the paved highway that leads into Plush. About 3.5 miles to walk this. Not much of a shoulder along the highway. Thankfully, pretty much no traffic either. Probably about 3/4 of a mile out from the Hart Mountain Store. This is pretty much it.
Because we had kind of like, he scared up the pronghorn and I didn't see him. I think that's what it was, because we were doing a bit of a cattle drive down the road.
Yeah.
But, yeah, when they get scared, they get a little loose.
Did you see that where that fence was attached to that rock formation? It was like a long rock formation that they had like drilled and put like rocks into it.
No.
Walking out of the town of Plush, stopped at the Hart Mountain Store, got my resupply box. So walk in, walk out, resupply. Did 10 miles this morning. Hope to get another 10 miles in this evening. And head up there to Hart Mountain. This is Hart Lake, as it's marked on the map. Clearly no longer a lake. It's actually part of a chain of lakes called Warner Lakes, which spreads across the valley. But for me, this looks like an opportunity to maybe cut off some miles, because the route actually goes all the way this way and then, you know, comes all the way back around. So I might just be able to make a beeline across this big, open, grassy field. So I've picked a bit of a landmark to shoot for. There's a little bit of a notch right over there, and that's what I'm heading for, and that'll keep me on course. Well, this is what I was afraid of. This is basically the risk here of crossing this lake, is the fact that it's technically a lake, and once you reach the lowest point, it could be wet and muddy. That's kind of where I'm at right now. And all I can really do to avoid sinking in the mud is step on the pieces of grass, and the little roots and stuff will help keep me out of the mud. But the further I go, the more committed I am. Got about an extra 5 pounds of mud on each shoe now. So I was shooting for that little notch there. There's been a bunch of water here that I've been trying to work around. And you know, if it hadn't rained as hard as it did yesterday, I'm not sure I would have had this problem. Yeah, so I'm essentially in the middle of the lake right now, which should be the lowest part. But I worked myself into a bit of a pickle here. This is also the kind of situation I'm used to putting myself in. A bunch of random cross-country treks and taking chances. And I think the problem I'm working with now is there's a bit of like a stream that runs through this whole area. So I think no matter which way I go, I'm gonna have to cross it. Well, the only real option I have is to kind of backtrack the way I came. I'm gonna try and shoot for the other shore there where, you know, the official route actually goes, and sort of angle my way there. But I might have to backtrack a long ways to get to something dry. I'm still running into a wall of water here. Well, I'm back on solid ground at the moment, if you want to call it that. I've got about 1.25 miles before I reach the end of the lake bed. All right, that's it for the lake bed. And back to the road. Man, am I glad to be done with that. You know, if it was a drier time of year, maybe the middle of summer, and if it hadn't rained yesterday, that would have worked out. You know, that would have worked out pretty well. I could have just cut across the whole thing, and I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have had any problems. But I really can't say I regret it, because it's doing stuff like that that, you know, really makes these kind of hikes an adventure. But when you put yourself in situations like that, find yourself with an obstacle to overcome, you know, those are the kind of things you remember, and that's what really makes an adventure. This actually looks like it could be a nice campsite. So this is the sleeping bag liner I picked up when I stopped in Christmas Valley and took the bus into Bend. And this thing does add a decent amount of warmth, because my 40-degree bag was not cutting it. Tonight's gonna be 30, and this 40-degree bag is not gonna be warm enough on its own. And this quilt has horizontal baffles, so when I'm sleeping, especially if you're a side sleeper, all the down on top will migrate to the sides, and then you'll have a big cold spot right on top, right where you need the insulation the most, you know? So I've got to kind of mess with this and, you know, work the down back into the baffles where it can be on top of me and not on the side. And I've probably got to do this at least once throughout the night, if not twice. So it's kind of a long process, but the bag liner does really help. I've got to say, it's rated for like an extra 10 degrees. I'll give it that.